He was meaning are violent protesters, anarchists, looters, the kind of lawlessness that we saw play out before President Trump came in with the National Guard and calmed our streets with law and order. All parties agree that it may be rescinded. The dispute is instead primarily about the procedure the agency followed in doing so. So in other words, President Trump was right on the law here. It was unlawful the way President Obama went about this, but
will you and other White House officials be wearing masks at the rally?
it's a personal choice. I won't be wearing a mask. I can't speak for my colleagues. The point is, it was a play on CNN repeatedly taking the president out of context, like the time when you guys had a chyron that read, "Trump slammed some illegal immigrants. They're animals." Well, guess what? The people he called animals were MS-13 illegal immigrants who regularly mutilate people in this country. Those things are entirely misleading. That's an absurd attempt to justify the misleading headlines that are regularly on your network. Like I was just walking in, watching CNN as they lauded the quote, rallies in the streets.
Are you saying that the president
Gotta let me finish, Jim. This isn't a cable news segment. I'm answering your question right now from the White House podium. When I walk out of here, when I walk out here, Jim, and I see on your network celebratory headlines about the rallies and the protests outside, and you actually said protests and rallies. So in light of a protest, if these gatherings happen in light of a protest or a rally, as you say, that rally is to be condoned, but not the president's rally. I mean, it's appalling. You have one person on your network saying that this is a celebration in the streets, a carnival-like atmosphere. There's a guy with a sign that says free hugs. It's beautiful what's happening in the streets. There is music. People are hugging. You celebrate hugging in the context of a protest, but in a Trump rally where we celebrate historic low African-American unemployment, criminal justice reform, HBCUs, that rally is not allowed because guess what, Jim? It doesn't fit the ideological agenda of CNN. As to Juneteenth, there were a lot of people who didn't know what Juneteenth was, and Google searches prove that. And you can see, I looked at the chart on Google searches on Juneteenth, and this year they went like this, and that's thanks to President Trump. I think that's a hypothetical, and that's a speculative question. One thing I would note, and I think it's just very important, especially as we go into the weekend and we begin to look at some of the news coverage out there, is that I would encourage all of you to cover the protest in the same way that you covered the rally goers. It's really quite something when you look at this extraordinary video by Media Research Center and Newsbusters, where you have multiple hosts on MSNBC, CNN, and CBS boasting about the, quote, massive crowd. I mean massive. Tens of thousands of people, thousands and thousands, up to 200,000 people, they exuberantly exclaim, but then they have grave concerns about the size of the Trump rallies. You have MSNBC contributors saying social justice over social distancing, but when the president looks to celebrate the accomplishments for minority and communities in this country, our rallies are derided as breeding grounds for coronavirus, while Lawrence O'Donnell celebrates arm-in-arm protests. So I really think that we should have internal consistency here in the way we cover large crowds. We should be guided by science, not cherry-picking science, as I see all too often on the airwaves, especially from CNN.